that my name is Yay, and that goes for my really long name, Evgenia Alexandrovna Yushkova, but you guys can simply call me Yay. And I'm a fashion business consultant, and I specialize in helping fashion brands and retailers build and scale high-performing private labels. Over the past decade, I've helped build and scaled more than $19 million private label brands for major retailers in ready-to-wear and sports licensing space. And I've also have helped dozens of emerging consumer brands to start and grow their businesses. If you're here today, the chances are you're either leading or thinking of building the private label, or at very least, maybe considering it. It's also, even if you are not in a private label space right now, these principles that we're going to talk about today would really be able to apply to any consumer goods brand. So whether you are a manufacturer under your own name or someone else's, what you're really talking about here is building the resilience, a profitable, a product, business model in fast changing, high pressured markets. If you're leading private label brand and need strengthening your margins, this would be a great topic for you to listen to today. If you're launching one of the private labels right now, or even thinking potentially that you would like to launch a private label for your retail business, this is definitely something that we will be covering today. Or you potentially, if you are really just manufacturing partner and looking to evolve with more agility and speed and control, again, this would be a great topic for you guys, and we're really excited to uncover some of the really interesting things and tips that I'm here to share with you today. But let's be honest, the market has really shifted. Supply chains are tightened, right? Customer habits are more unpredictable. The competition is really fierce than ever before. And how do we not to really stay resilient, to survive, and not only just survive, but actually thrive in this business in today's environment? We are going to talk about really how to build a resilient private label strategies that can adapt, scale, and boost your bottom line today. Really want to thinking about how do we be able to create and get ourselves to profitability, right? And be able to really optimize, and so that we can drive maximum ROI and maximum sales to our brands that we're creating. But resilience starts really with the strategy level, right? And it's not only about throwing more styles at the wall, it's really about building a system that adapts without losing a momentum. Hi, Dr. Mario. It's really great to see you. Welcome back. So really glad that you were able to join us today. We are waiting for a few others to join in as well. We have several registrants that are still trying to join. So we're looking forward for them to join soon. But really great to have you on the call again.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. I had a meeting that ran over. So I was like, oh no, I'm late. I got to make sure I show my face.
It's okay. No, it
Appreciate it.
happens. It happens. We're really happy to have you here. And we are broadcasting this live. So we're getting actually a lot of great comments and feedback as well. So really good to hear everybody. Thank you for sending out your comments. Really continuing to thinking about, it's not about thriving more throughout the styles like we've mentioned, right? But really thinking about the systems and strategies so that we don't lose the momentum of the sales that are potentially started up, and then now we're trying to figure out what the demand, whether it raises up or slows down. Too often I see brands with great potential that get stuck because they build a strategy that wasn't great, or was great for one season, but it was not translating into the next season. It worked really well at the beginning, but it broke down when the demand shifted. So really thinking about what are the flexible, growth-oriented private label strategies actually look like. First of all, it really starts with assortment structure. You need a smarter mix of core styles that drive consistent volume, seasonal capsules to stay relevant, and a test to react SKUs to validate demand before scaling. Dr. Mari, do you want to just jump in really quickly and kind of really share? And it's always admirable story to talk about your brand, but really share how you guys have approached, in this case, from the assortment structure in your brand and what you have found successful.
You brought up a great point regarding relevancy. With Incomparable, we're a premium modern minimalist brand. We focus primarily in the premium eyewear and watch sector. And we're a company that really sticks to our laurels as far as limited releases, um, premium materials, and a high touch point level as far as our quality control rollout. So we really pay attention to the trends as far as colors and what people are wearing and our core demographic in other areas, as opposed to just, yes, watches and eyewear. We definitely advance the look, advance with intention is our tagline, all that good stuff. But we want to be able to make sure that we're paying attention to the colorways, the materials, the dresses, the pants, the day watch, the eyewear, the sunglass premium material. Not only we want to last a long time, we want to make sure that it fits the customers transcendent over trendy lifestyle. So really being intentional for our modern minimalist core demographic as far as what they're wearing, what colors they're wearing, what seasons they're wearing, like you just mentioned, because oatmeals and tans can be great for fall and spring, but more of a pastel look as far as a faded pink or a dainty pink or a lipstick red, kind of like your glasses. It's can be good for spring and summer, and really paying attention to what else they're wearing to really complete the look, because it not only drives home the point of getting prospective customers to being new customers within Compo, but really paying attention to what they wear as far as a brand loyal aspect.
100%. And I also just want to also mention, in which I see this throughout your brand, which you actually do specialize in a really core styles, and it's predominantly we could see a particular frame that is, across all of your categories, right? And then you always are, this is your core styles with people, and that doesn't really change much from what I'm seeing. But you do also introducing seasonal capsules from what we're seeing. And what percentage would you say do you say you are core versus what you are testing and releasing in a seasonal capsules?
Probably 60, 30, 10. We do 60 core, 30 expansive, and 10, we like to call it the more so expressive testing, as far as what particular colorways will still fit, especially our modern minimalists like watches and eyewear. I'll give you two examples. With our Elevate Link Perry 42 millimeter watch, it's a Swiss movement, premium brushed rose gold. We tested different hues as far
Mm-hmm.
as what will work. And Barry Perry was a Pantone color of the year, I believe in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, 2022 or 2023. But we wanted to make sure that we got the one, the unisex audience, two, the audience as far as women who may love like a boyfriend watch size, as
Mm-hmm.
well as the guys that don't want anything too gaudy. Because in modern minimalism, we want to have like that subtle type of pop, but really expanding to individuals who are not the biggest monochromatic colorway
Mm-hmm.
fans. So making sure that we hit all of those benchmarks, like for that particular watch, and the same with our Manifest eyeglasses in green, making sure that we had a specific hue for our forest screen. Because the pastel green's more muted, it's more minimalist, it's more modern. But the
Mm-hmm.
forest green we still pay attention to the minimalist aspect with the green color hue, but really paying attention to people that want to have that subtle pop. So having that 60, 30, 10 rule as far as like the testing, seeing what works as far as wearing it out in the real world before even doing any like moving forward past a sample.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that really goes with our 10 plus rule. Because with that, even though it's the smallest percentage, it's really important because it really dictates the 30 and the 60 that we roll out with.
100%. This is really, thank you for a great insight. And Saloon, really welcome back to our roundtable. Really glad that you were able to join. Just really, we're talking about the building resilience and private label strategies. So, really glad that you're here. We'll be able to invite you to also put some input into our topic. But continuously really talking about what are the other things that we need to think about in order for us to stay resilient is really thinking about the real-time data loops. Resilient brands have, mechanisms in place to adapt based and on sell-through returns and customer feedbacks. Take meaningful data and collect it, be able to really understand and analyze it to see what is really happening with your product, besides just sales in returns. As an example, customer feedback is really important. Dr. Mari just also mentioned that they're doing that as well as part of their mechanism to really to generate to test of their products and see what's really happening before they are going to turn that into the core or potential seasonal product. That also means weekly reporting, not quarterly, really looking at rigorously of what's happening. And some of our brands actually even look at their reporting on a daily basis, because demand shifts and things, especially when they just launched it, first 2 weeks is very critical to really look at that reporting and really understand that feedback loop, so that you could be able to alter and potentially shift that product from your test into more of your core or your seasonal products, so that you could be able to chase your inventory in time. And finally, really, we need to look at also aligning with your category white space, right? Really thinking about the areas where your customer is underserved and overpaying, especially when we are talking about private label. When we build private label, we don't really trying to reinvent the wheel. We don't try to be the next happening fashion brand out there, consumer brand out there. Our goal is really to be able to serve our customer needs and really understand what they are not able to get from the brands that we already carry, from a national brands, or potentially they're overpaying because it's really expensive, more product, because for the branding aspect of it, and they potentially could save if it would be on a private label brand. The most resilient strategies are all iterative, right? They all are constantly changing. So nothing is really rigorous and, stays constant at all times. You're always constantly investing into new developments and figuring it out, what you'll be able to change and pivot, so that you'll have a strong foundation and resilient foundation in order for you to be able to succeed. For some of the examples I'd love to give of what could be done, right? For one of the things, especially if you're starting up and you're just thinking about launching a private label brand, you are probably in the process of working through a business plan. So one of the things that we always say, hey, instead of doing a single kind of a linear business plan scenario, use the scenario planning, with at least 3 potential market scenarios. What will happen if we are in recession? What will happen if we're kind of in a neutral state? Or what will happen if we are in a growth economy? And how would that pivot your strategies for your private label? Maintain a portfolio approach to your assortment, right? Some of the things we've talked about, some SKUs should be a high margin, some should be a really traffic drivers, and few are going to be extremely like more of a moonshots, right? Which is going to be what's going to actually drive and attract the testing perspective and attract the audience for something very unique. And really, this balances the risk and rewards while keeping your flexibility. Salam, do you have anything to add into this from your perspective, what you guys are doing? Well, let me know if you're able to join and you're able to hear us, because we cannot hear you if you are speaking. Also thinking about how we can integrate the AI-driven forecasting, right, to predict the demand shifts, and really in the granular level, not really thinking about the regional channels and seasons, looking about how we could be able to even forecast the demand and predict the demand shifts by color, like Dr. Maria just mentioned, by fabrics that you guys are using. It's all going to help us in sizing. This is going to be another great one in apparel. It's all going to help us to really make quick adjustments, and especially if you are set up for where you can produce in small batches and really react quickly to the demand and demand shifts that you are having. Move beyond average week sales, really, instead of factors and external singles like, competitor pricing, stock market trends, or global shipping rates to anticipate changes. This is one of the biggest pitfalls that we are seeing when we work with the merchandising and buying teams when we are building the private label, is that they tend to really look at their average weekly sales but they're really not looking at beyond what's happening within the economy, what's happening with in the industry, with the give you an example of the tariff shift right now. So I mean, having the predictive and predict the future really be able to help you to stay resilient with what you're doing today. Forging partnerships with key suppliers and retailers, that can also be can be able to co-fund or co-develop exclusive SKUs is going to be very critical for you to differentiate yourself as well as stay resilient within this market. Pool resources for R&D, our new fabrics technologies, sharing both the risks and rewards is going to be very critical in this in this particular junction as well for us to stay resilient. There's so much development that is happening right now. Technology is blooming and it's actually integrating into fabrics now. We can be able to get fabrics that are heat resistant, that are could potentially antimicrobial, and all that adds value to your customer, and at the same time allows you to really differentiate yourself from another brand. Give you an example. If you have three different t-shirt brands and they're all making the same t-shirt, how are you going to differentiate your brand from those three brands? So potentially having some of the fabrications that you're using that no one else is using, this could be a one way to do it. I always say you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Understand what your competitors doing, understand their weaknesses and strengths, and do better than them. And that's what's going to help you to win, especially in the private label sector. Transforming from fixed seasonal calendars to rolling drops is another really critical piece for us to stay resilient. Where you launch product capsules more frequently to test and pivot. We often rely on our seasonal calendars and we do large collection drops of fall, winter, spring, summer, resort. But what the trick that we have is when we are doing that big rollover, we have a very little time to be able to pivot and be able to understand what are the winning tests are to be able to actually bring them in our main season as potentially core, or that 30% that Mario mentioned that they're reserving for the expansion of that particular core as an example. So thinking about how we can do launches of little micro collections or micro capsules on much frequent, and so that we could be able to test for the previous from the within the season, current season, so that we could prepare for the following season and have more reads and customer responses so that we could have less of a risk when we are ready to invest in a large bulk of inventory. This also approaches really the forecast of excitement. It also reduces the deep discounting cycles because you are now really eliminating the risk of knowing that this product already had a great response on your first release and now you're bringing it back with much more, and you're investing the inventory and you know that that product will sell. It resonates with your customer and really aligns with the real-time consumer demand. Really helps us to be able to stay relevant and be able to get the customer to really dictate what they want from us. Dr. Mario, you've really mentioned on this how you guys are doing it within your particular brand, but talk to a little bit about for me, are you guys doing the seasonal cycle calendars or you are really more rolling product drops?
We're more seasonal, and we actually adapted to that as far as things that are seasonal. Because with being a premium modern minimalist brand, we don't really release a lot of things as far as rolling dates, or if it's like a specific, I guess you can say, um, time of year or whatnot. But we really focus on yeah, fall, winter, spring, summer, restocks as far as like that's concerned. We really are cognizant as far as the timing, and like you mentioned previously, paying attention to what the customers want to wear and to have in specific colorways and specific seasons, because that's really important. I'll even give an example for a specific watch that constantly sells out. It's white and rose gold. It's one of our butterscotch releases for our petite collection, and this particular watch is a uptick of demand spring summer. because of the colorway of white and rose gold. We have another one. It's called Advanced Crown 36 millimeter unisex, but it's black and rose gold. So it's more of a demand fall, winter, hint of spring, just because of that difference in colorway of white to black and the difference of sizes, 34 millimeter, 36 millimeter. The material is really important as well because ceramic, smaller watches for women are definitely more popular in what we call the brunch season months
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
Incomparable. So really paying attention again to what you said as far as reducing that risk of releasing something at the wrong time or reducing the failure risk of launching something that the customers might not be ready for as of yet, or they want to have a different colorway or a different style or a different product itself. So we really like to pay attention and gather that feedback because it's really important for us too.
100%. And if you are really in the apparel brand kind of business, that really helps you to be able to do a little bit more of rigorous rollouts because again, you're shortening the time of actual development. You can do a lot of on-demand rollouts, right? So you could be able to either print on demand or produce on demand so that yes, you're going to make less margin. It's really not about the profitability at that stage when we're testing. It's really about understanding the response of your customer so that you can then bring that product into your bulk production and make your margins up so that you could be able to have minimizing the risk though of having the inventory that you potentially might not sell through.
Can I add one more thing? Just
Yeah,
one more thing.
please.
You mentioned a great point with underserved and overpaying. Hey, right? So meeting that particular pain point, especially with being a premium brand that doesn't necessarily release product like you said, like on a rolling
Mhm.
calendar. Because if they tend to see you too much, especially in like eyewear and watch space, particular price points on the other stuff, it tends to kind of dilute your brand. And you mentioned a point alluding to that earlier as well. So you want to have that specific balance of, like you said, meeting that particular pain point, whether it's style, look, a specific look, going to a specific place, catering to a specific demographic that lives at a specific place as well. Because you notice, what we've noticed over time, when we stop doing like our rolling releases, people on different parts of in the US, which is our strongest market, they tend to gravitate towards different eyewear colorways and watches colorways at specific times of year, and that goes with specific materials as well. They're going to wear more mesh spring,
Mhm.
summer. It's breathable, all that stuff
Mhm.
too. So we would like to pay attention to that. So I just want to make sure I added that.
No, thank you very much. This is really great, valuable input. Mark, thank you for sending your comment in our live chat. I really appreciate it. And he's asking a question, what's a sign that my private label strategies is too rigid? Really great question. And really what I like to say is to really thinking about your team, if they are dreading the change direction, or if they need 6 or plus more months to respond to your performance, then it's definitely too rigid. You got to look under the hood to see how we could be able to get that process optimized in a way where it gives them the opportunity to be able to respond quicker and be able to do some of this testing that we just discussed. You really want to be able to relocate your budgets and swap styles within about 30 to 45 days maximum. So a lot of times what we're seeing, because if you are truly in the seasonal releases, you usually tied up your budget to that particular season. And once that budget is spent, it's very difficult to either swap styles or potentially even relocate the budget. So the goal is to create a system in the process so that it allows for quick changes, for quick pivots within a season. So again, once again, this is where the opportunity of on-demand testing really comes into role and play, or potentially having a supply chain section of where instead of pushing your inventory, pushing your product, you are actually pooling, right? So working with factories that are allowing you to do small quantities, but on much rapid, quicker time so that you'll be able to turn and pivot from there. Hopefully that answered your question. I really appreciate for asking. Another question just came in, how many test products should I include in each season? So this is a great question. Dr. Mari already also mentioned it. A healthy benchmark would be about 10 to 15% of your total assortment for that season or for that release, right? Enough to test a meaningful concept without really overwhelming your operations, because to anything that you run through a test is it's really labor intensive, as you know. It takes a lot of development time to really create it. So at the same time, you don't want to overwhelm that while you are trying to focus on your core. And so that's really important to not also be able to reserve enough percentage, but not have too little of a percent where the test becomes meaningless. So that's a really great question. I'm really glad that you asked it. Thank you very much. The second layer of resilience is really thinking about the operational agility. I always say strategy is what you plan, but operations is what you really live on, right? This is where the most private labels hit the bottlenecks, because legacy systems were really designed to accompany bulk orders, bulk production, bulk buying, and really not doesn't have the speed and flexibility. And this is where it starts to break down. Once we really think about how do we make a systems and processes that are allowing us to be resilient and you have the speed and flexibility, there are certain things that I like to look at is sourcing, production, and distribution. So on the sourcing side, you really want to think about, are you overly relying on one vendor or region or the one MOQ model? Often I work with brands who are solely producing only in China, and they are solely connected to a particular set of vendors and they large MOQs, which doesn't allow them for quick testings that we just discussed. So thinking about dual sourcing models really, and work with partners who can produce both large runs and short runs. And as well as looking at potentially at diversifying your supply chain in different regions. So if you're are currently producing in China or Asia, thinking about, is there other regions in the world that can also specialize in the fabric or materials or production that you are currently producing? And starting opening up those doors is going to be very critical. Bonus points also would be for vendors that offer fabric liability or finished goods stock programs. A lot of times when we are working with the vendors and we have large MOQs, they are heavily dependent on the fabric commitment. So one of the things that we often do is we commit to the fabric and colors, but we do not commit to the actual style and production, so that we could be able to pull from that fabrics and create styles that we thought were going to do well. And if for whatever reason they did not sell well, we quickly be able to pivot and utilize that fabric into a different styles or a different season, so that we are not stuck with the inventory that did not sell. It's easy to repurpose the materials and versus actually dealing with the finished goods inventory that has not sold, because that eats up your cash. Dr. Meyer, I'm curious how to hear how you guys are doing on the dual sourcing model. I mean, because you guys are heavily also dependent on manufacturing in one region, but what do you
Mhm.
guys do and how do you solve that problem?
We're actually looking to expand from solely China to China and Italy. When we've come up with that, just as far as our deeper commitment to the premium eco-friendly material aspect,
Mhm,
what we started to notice is we never really had a problem as far as a 30 to 45-day clip for delivery.
mhm,
But what we would start to notice is when we first started in 2019, we would get specific shipments that would miss the little things. The glue
mhm,
would be messed up on something. The wrapping wouldn't be up to par when it comes to the overall QC, and it would be hard for customers to unwrap specific product that they would get.
mhm,
And we're really meticulous in that space because, as we all know, that's on the call. Presentation's everything. So we started to outsource and really have a point structure, really just checking one certifications for eco-friendly materials, premium materials, getting specific samples, how quick can the samples come, and really holding ourselves accountable for having multiple manufacturers, building those relationships with them, making sure that there's no or limited language barrier, And really, you mentioned a great point as far as like the fabrics and materials and really getting those into play, because having all of that set as a foundation really helps to expedite the process when it's time for sampling, and then when it's time for the MOQs, and really paying attention to the MOQ aspect as well, because multiple colors of specific MOQs are really good for specific manufacturers, because you can really tell that they really stand behind their product, and the warranty checks and all of that stuff as well. So making sure that all of those I's and are dotted and T's are crossed are really important for us, because we learned those lessons early.
And Hugo just brought up a really good point, which thank you for sharing this. One of the other things that I think we often see is that we go to the vendors, especially if we've worked with those vendors before, we come
Mhm,
into them and say, hey, here's the new product line that we're thinking of coming out. Can you do it? Then
mhm,
95% of the time, the vendor will say yes,
mhm,
because they want your business. But you got to be able to do your homework and really understand what that particular vendor is really specializes in. Don't try to feed into a new complete product that they potentially not really an experts in, because it will first of all delay your R&D and also potentially eat up more resources and time and cost and sampling and back and forth. But also that potentially that not might give you the results that you need. So having a multiple partners that specialize in specific things that you could be able to pivot from and to, depending on what your needs are for the current line, is going to be very critical in this particular point. The other thing for us to really consider is production, right? And we know in production, speed matters the most. You should always have access to at least one short lead production line, whether that's a print on demand, one of the options. Manufacturing on demand is another option. But we also see more and more factories are coming out with the short lead production line options, where you could be able to, again, reserve based on the reserve fabric and already have everything approved for the cutting tickets as well as your production samples. They could be able to produce short, small runs, but much quicker. So instead of producing them, let's say in 30, 45 days, they will produce them in 2 weeks. And then after that, they will be able to, based on your demand, to be able to release new shipments every 2 weeks for you and ship them out, which that would be the way to do if you're trying to stay resilient in this market today. This also allows us for really to test the small volumes and really reorder fast and quickly. We also help brands to cut lead times by just doing that alone, from like 60 days sometimes all the way just to, like I mentioned, 14 days, without sacrificing the quality. Reach out to me or drop a comment below if you're interested and want to learn about how we did it. I will definitely get back to you and especially share a particular contact that you could utilize, that are currently doing it today, and they're doing a fantastic job. The other thing is we always think is about the distribution. Questions to use to really ask, are we really using our distribution and optimizing in the best way possible to get the product fastest to our consumer? We know that in today's world, we're competing with Amazon, and everybody's expecting the deliveries to be like Amazon. So if you're really using a centralized warehousing, that can slow down things, right? It can slow down your shipping. It can slow down your receiving if you are shipping, especially seasonally, a huge volume of orders that are coming in at the same time as the inventory are flowing in. So thinking about maybe shifting or diversifying in addition to your central warehousing that potentially takes care of your core product, is to think that using a regional 3PLs that can bring you closer to the customer, especially during the testing phase for those testing styles or seasonal styles that are turning quickly. Resilience really will mean us to be thinking about how we can be closer to our customer, how we can replenish quickly, and how we can also be able to reroute and relocate, depending on where the inventory has depleted quicker, in which warehouse at 3PL. So are you able to transfer inventory potentially from your central warehouse to some of those 3PLs? Dr. Meyer, I'm curious to know, how do you guys do your distribution and be able to deliver in a quick manner the product to your customer?
We like to make sure we're very hands-on. We really have the advantage with being a brand that produces things in small batches. We have everything in three different places. One, we do 3PL with our eyewear division at our particular optometrist office, and we have the majority of our inventory on hand in our warehouse in Houston, and we do have specific inventory just with our manufacturers. Just when it comes to going to specific stores and things like that, like to handle that quick expedited thing that we might not be able to in case we're out of town, or just to really handle if anything happens and we're not able to do any shipping. Grateful to have a 100% shipping rate just because, being able to dot our I's and cross our T's there. But we really like to have into our wheelhouse like that buffer in case anything is sold out and we're doing a restock. We know it might be about 30 to 35 days just with specific shipping. We might pay extra for the cost, but just in case, we'll have a buffer for customers to be able to have a pre-sale. And we have a specific rollout where our VIPs get early access. So we know that we already have it in stock. So they'll get early access, and then we'll do a campaign build, email, SMS, and then it goes out to the general public. So we like to make sure we have all those I's, and again, the I's dotted and the T's crossed, just to ensure that, and having that open communication, one specifically with our eyewear division and manufacturers, how many they'll have on pretty much on deck for the MOQs with different colorways, with different things as far as seeing what our like our B2B aspect, what does that look like? How many like eyewear, well, how many pairs of eyewear will they need? How many watches will they need in store for to hand that, off to specific 3PLs with our division and our manufacturers, like I said, in case we don't have any in stock on hand.
I love it. And I'm really glad that you brought this up. And that takes me really to another great point. Thinking about developing the supplier network by tiers, right? This is another
Mhm.
great way to do this, where we can break it into tier one, for example, would be your large volume production suppliers. Tier two would be your specialized capabilities, which could be the like premium materials that Dr. Mario mentioned. And tier three could be your for small batches and rapid responses orders. So really considering that in thinking about your supplier network within those tiers and having your development team, a